Hello, everyone, and welcome to Office Hours. As always, this is where you can submit questions about media and production 24/7. I'm going to toss up the QR code here, and if you are interested in getting a question into the show, use that code down there in the bottom, and it'll get you into the system. You can ask any questions you want. They'll go into the queue. We'll get to them either late in the show today or tomorrow as things come up. If you don't have anything that can scan a QR code, you can always go directly to askofficehours.global, and that'll do basically the same thing. It gets you into the system. Once you're in the system, you drive the show by your votes. So we are always interested in what you want us to talk about, what you want, what you find the most important of the things that we're discussing. So put your questions in and then vote on those questions. That takes you to the Mukana system. And so if you go to officehours.global, the main website, you can find the breadcrumb trail to get you into Mukana. Right now, it is time for us to talk about, just very briefly, our second hour. We're talking to the folks from VizVector today. VizRT is a company that's been around for quite a long time. And
I just want to level set here. So we're talking about how our install is going with VizVector. So the folks at VizVector are coming to visit us, but we're not. It's not a VizVector show as much as us talking about the setup of us using VizVector for office hours. And so we're
fair enough.
So it'll be. I just want to level set everyone. Yeah, we're going to break down a little bit about what we've done, what we've learned. VizVector will be here to answer any questions about VizVector. So you can ask any questions about VizVector that you'd like. But yeah.
Perfect. All right. Well, right now it is time for your questions because that's the main show always. Let's dive into our first hour. Alexander, what do our viewers and listeners have on their minds today?
Our first question this morning is from Brody Brazil in Danville, California. I bought a Blackmagic Cinema 6K full frame to use via HDMI with an Atem Extreme. At all 4K 6K resolutions, the video output is windowed in 1080 with letterbox on tops and bottom. In 1080 mode, it's overscaled. Can this not fit to screen?
Jesse Kester, try to help him out.
Alex, I'm going to ask you to interrupt me if the answer is yes, but I'm pretty sure the answer is no. The cinema camera is designed for 17:9, and it's designed for RAW, not image rescaling. So 17:9 is going to give you those black bars at the top and bottom. And if you can't rescale it, then at the camera to ATEM level, once you get into the ATEM or pass through from the ATEM to your streaming service, you could zoom in on the image, but from the camera level to the ATEM, I think the answer is no.
Alex?
I can't believe that they wouldn't have a way to do that, but you may be right. I don't know. I haven't used the full frame version, so I just don't know the answer to that. And so I know that we've always had problems when you first get a 6K. There's a long string of swear words that come out as you try to figure out why the top and bottom stripes are there. And it usually has to do with you setting the camera to 4K. For whatever reason it gives you that. You have to leave it at its native 6K and then let it, and then the HDMI typically is going to be a full frame sensor, a full frame output. And so there's a little bit of, you kind of bang on it until you get the full frame 16:9. It's not, for whatever reason, that's not an obvious solution, and it should be. It should be, given how many people use it with this. But I will say that the cinema cameras all work differently. One of the problems that we had when we got the 12K camera was that it doesn't shade. So as they go towards these cinema cameras, they haven't been as committed to keeping it backwards compatible with the overall ecosystem, which I think is a mistake. But I think that they've kind of focused on that. So Jesse may be right, and because I haven't used it personally, I just don't know.
Courtney?
Yeah, I guess you could use the DVE and the ATEM to upscale it and crop the left and right off. So you'd be taking a crop of it because you'd be getting rid of the black bars and the letterbox in the top and bottom. But then you'd have to probably remember to always select the DVE for that camera.
The only reason that I think that is probably something that you just have to do to get it right is because this sounds crazy. Like, it sounds crazy that they wouldn't have a full frame 16:9 output from the full frame sensor. So, because it's just a great solution if it is. So let us work on that. We'll reach out to Blackmagic and see if we can't get an official answer from them.
Let's go to the next question.
Next question is from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. Astera announced the launch of LunaBulb, which externally replicates a conventional light bulb, but internally contains all of the creative control of Astera's lighting ecosystem. And there's a link there.
Courtney, you want to dive into this?
Yeah, I looked at the website. Apparently what they've done is they've taken and built DMX control into an individual light bulb. And they have this little case that the bulbs travel in that you can program them in there and assign them universe, et cetera. Went and plugged into the case. Looks like a bunch of little Easter eggs inside that case for you. But then once you put them in, this would be very handy for using in sets where you have a ton of practicals. They're using standard bulbs, like this restaurant scene, et cetera, so that you can control the, the color balance and the brightness, and you can change the white point, et cetera, between tungsten and daylight, and adjust the levels intermittently and actively during a scene. You can control the levels individually of each of the individual light bulbs. So it's kind of handy, I would guess, for those kind of systems.
Did you see anything about pricing? Is it an expensive solution, or is it something that everybody?
I didn't get that far. It probably comes in a 6-pack. I'm not sure what the pricing is there that they showed there.
Alex, are you familiar with this?
I haven't used that one. Aperture makes one as well. It's called a 7C. A B7C is one. I think one of the ones that they have there, and it's relatively. You can get 8 of them for like $800 with a case and charger and stuff like that, and it's battery powered. So the one that I'm most familiar with is the Aperture one, and it's been out for years. So I don't know. This one looks like it's smaller and looks more like if you had to expose it. The one thing about the Aperture light bulb is that, and I have it here. Hold on, let me pull it over. So this is the Aperture version of that, and I use it. The reason I know about these is I take them with me when I go on trips. So if I show up on office hours, I replace all the bulbs in the hotel room so I can color it. So that's why I know about these lights. But this is what the light looks like. So what the new LunaBulb does is it looks like a bulb. Like it really does look like a bulb, and it does it, but it doesn't have any of its own battery power. I'm not sure if it's as bright, but these B7Cs, and I also don't know if these will take DMX. So they're controllable through the Aperture software. I don't know if you can use DMX to control them as well. And on a lot of film sets, I don't know if they would do DMX that as much. It's just not. I think that working on an app or working on DMX would be the same for a lot of film set folks because they just don't use DMX as much as stage or live folks do. So I think that anyway. So I think that those are the two. You might want to look at the price. I'm going to guess, just looking at the websites, that the LunaBulb is probably 50 to 100% more than the Aperture solution.
Let's go to our next question.
Next question is from David Brady, New York City, working on a 3-city video mapping project on a budget. Any rental resources where I can find projectors, stands, and cabling resources in Los Angeles, Berkeley, and San Jose? Early September timeframe.
Courtney Gooden, you're in Los Angeles.
Yeah, Audiovisual Rentals, AV Rentals. I think they have a San Francisco office and they have a LA office. And they do, a lot of AV rentals for a lot of big stuff out there. So check with them. They'd be easy to drive the stuff down to San Jose from San Francisco or Berkeley. So that might be a good choice for you.
Alex.
Yeah, if you're looking for a company to work with, if you're looking for rental resources, PRG will have what you need as well. They're everywhere. If you are looking for a company to help you just make this go away in these areas, I would highly recommend a company called MV Staging. They're out of South San Francisco, but they also have locations in LA and Baltimore and Utah and a bunch of other places. It's where they do a ton of work for all the usual suspects in the Bay Area. so good company that has an enormous amount of infrastructure and knowledge. And you can reach out to me and I can put you in touch with them if you need to.
Excellent. Let's move to the next question.
Next question is from Guy Cochran in Seattle. Is wireless NDI ready for actual live broadcasting?
Big question. Jef Keithly's here to help us out today. Jef?
Well, we've definitely used it for that. It's actually happening, I think, this weekend. The Pikes Peak International Hill Climb was one place where we really pushed it to the limit. That was involved with up to 22 different cameras that were sprinkled around the mountain. Not very many of them they were fibered back, but then they were fibered into NDI converters that then did NDI back over wireless links, bouncing around the mountain and between multiple hops. That was all mostly engineered wireless, though. This wasn't just Wi-Fi or long-reaching RF. It was engineered like air fiber systems that were 60 gigahertz, and so there was a few that were less, but most of them were 60 gigahertz links between the different places. I know key factor here is, let's talk about, before we go too far into this, there's different types of NDI. So there's full bitrate NDI, which is most of the time referred to as full bandwidth. Then there's NDI HX, HX2, and HX3. There's literally 4 different versions of NDI. So HX2 is H.264 usually encapsulated within that. So it's a very lightweight codec so that it could actually go across a wireless link without a whole lot of extra overhead needed. HX3, H.265 usually, so that gets a little bit better on the bandwidth and a little bit higher quality. So we were using a mixture of HX2 around Pikes Peak when we were bouncing around. We've also used this for some runs, which were like ultrathons, which are nuts in themselves because they're around Lake Tahoe was where we were for this one. And we were doing links back and forth, same type system using, I believe that one also was Unify. So it was ubiquity antennas back and forth like the air fibers. So it just depends on your infrastructure and what you have, but it definitely is not just something you throw up on. I don't use it on just normal Wi-Fi. It's purpose-built wireless backhaul is what we use, the NDI HX2 and now HX3.
Alex Lindsay.
The example that they showed is probably the best example that you could use it for is over water. so when you have water, you have a lot less. So, like if you're going to show wireless, I mean, we've done wireless over the ocean over very long, and people are like, how did you throw it for so long? I'm like, well, it's flat. So there's not a lot going on. There's not a lot of trees, not a lot of other, usually not a lot of metal. So I think that they did it in the best case scenario. I have to admit that, number one is I absolutely think you can do wireless NDI, and I think it'll work. I have seen so many cases where I experience the event and then I see these articles, and the articles don't point out all the things that went wrong, and I've just gotten to the point where I don't believe any of them anymore. Like I'm just seeing, I just look at people's posts and I just go, sure. Unless I see it, I don't believe it anymore. And the reason is just because I watch some of these shows, I see all the breakups, I see all the things that aren't working, and then I read an article about how great it was, and I'm just kind of like, okay, well, that's not, I can't trust you ever, So I think that consciously talking about what works and doesn't work is really important, and I just don't feel like a lot of times these posts do that well, But I will say, underneath all of that, I would say that I have total confidence that we can make NDI wireless work.
Jef Keithly, you wanted to get back in?
Yeah, I want to say, too, that this was for a webcast that we were doing for Pikes Peak. So they had certain expectations in that. And same thing for the Ultrathon. It was also a webcast. They weren't requiring it to be, quote, broadcast, even though we had 4K cameras out there and we had everything that was in place was a broadcast workflow, but it was destination to the web. So, and also they did understand the conditions that we were working in, because the day before that show, a big, huge storm came in over the mountain and we lost like 2 towers that were repeaters and the camera that was at the top of the hill too, like the finish line, a lightning strike knocked it down. So there are times though that when people are looking at, they're going to be super hypercritical, but there are other times I feel like that if this is the only way you can get coverage, then so be it. It is what it is. Like with the Ultrathon, I cringe whenever I see the cameras that they're running along with cameras on gimbals. So like cameras, I'm talking like phones, right? So their iPhones are on a gimbal, and that's coming back over LU Smart with a bonded cellular connector that's in their pocket. There's a little bit of breakup. There's a little bit of shakiness. There's a lot more shakiness than you imagine.
Shocked.
But yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. It's like sometimes people are okay with that, and it just depends on the destination. And I think in these situations, sometimes it's just better to get the content, period, versus, I'm just going to sit on this locked off shot, barely following a little ant going down the hill. That's kind of the trade-off you get. Do you want the close-up? Maybe a little shaky, maybe a little breakup, but at least you got the close up at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense to me. Let's go on to the next question.
Next question's from Aaron Cody in St. Louis, Missouri. Recently streamed to YouTube. Test stream, no audio video sync issues. Check the real-time live stream. No sync issues. Hyperdeck records, no sync issues. Live stream replay on the client's channel, major sync issues. What gives? OBS encode settings?
Jeffrey Powers going to help you out here. Jeffrey?
So the first question I have for you is, did you test on your YouTube or on your client's YouTube? Because I know that might not make a difference in most cases, but every now and then you have hardware issues, you have connection issues, and that can happen from there. I'd always do some sort of test on the client before you go ahead and move forward. It sounded like the Hyperdeck worked, so you could actually use that as a backup. There, like I said, possible network issues. If the stream key was changed other than the default, like maybe somebody put in HLS, that could have caused a problem there. Not normally, but it could, especially if it's coming in non-HLS from there. And then, of course, changing that normal low latency, ultra low latency. I'd always started it at normal. But then again, you did say OBS in there, and OBS is not really the one I would use for a client. Simple as that.
And Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, I'd probably be looking at OBS pretty hard. The only thing that confuses me is that the live stream being in sync and the VOD being out of sync doesn't really make sense. You will see a slight difference. So it's usually by a frame or two, difference between the live and the VOD and YouTube. But usually it's not usually something most people would notice. So I'm assuming you're seeing something much more noticeable. And I don't actually. So if you truly had the live stream on YouTube looking okay, and you really looked at it the whole show and it looked fine, then I'm confused a little bit by that specifically. That said, I would never use a software encoder for anything that I was being paid for. Never ever would I use a software encoder for on OBS or anything for something I'm being paid for. There are hardware encoders. You want them to be dedicated appliances, that are going to get that to where it needs to go. But you shouldn't. I mean, there's so many variables. The real problem with software encoders is that they, something happens on your computer and you get up to 70 or 80% and they start dropping frames, they start dropping sync, they start dropping all kinds of other things because you don't have nearly enough control over the pipeline. The only way that I would use a software encoder is if it's the only thing on the computer. There's nothing else running on the computer. The computer runs at 20% capacity and I'm piping video into it and all it's doing is encoding. So I'm turning a Mac Mini or a PC into an appliance. Video comes in, it gets encoded, and it goes out. So I'm basically building a hardware encoder out of a software-defined hardware encoder like an Elemental. That's what an Elemental is. It sits on the Elemental appliance is a Linux device that sits there and doesn't do anything else. It's all it does is just turn your video bits turn your video baseband into video bits and sends them to the internet. So if you're getting paid for something, think about how you're either going to use a piece of hardware and turn it into an appliance or just buy an appliance. We're using the Talents here, the Osprey Talents here. For this show, I use a lot of the Elemental links. These are little, $1,000 boxes that will send it into AWS, and then once it's there, it's in pretty good shape. So you can decide what those things are, but it shouldn't be OBS on your laptop. I get the gamers do it, but wouldn't do it. Not if I'm getting paid.
Alexander Knight.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, assuming everything is set correctly and OBS is set to the correct and recommended streaming settings, I've seen some weird issues. One time I had somebody say, "Oh, I was watching your video on YouTube after the fact, and it looked like there were some sync issues." And I pulled it up, and it looked fine to me. And then when I asked them to take a look again, they refreshed it in their browser again and looked at it, and it was fine. So I've seen weird issues like that. I'm not saying it's OBS, and I'm not saying it's YouTube, but one thing I just wanted to point out that I have noticed.
Yeah, I've experienced the same thing, that somebody watching something on the web, there will be some disconnect, whether it's sync or something freezing or whatever, and it turns out that it wasn't the actual file, it was the delivery of said file. So there's a lot of variability here. Let's go on to the next question.
Next question is from Francis Fry in Cambridge, Massachusetts. What is the difference between OWC Thunderblade and Express 1M2?
Getting into the weeds here. Alex, you want to help detangle them?
This is the OWC Thunderblade, and this is the 1M2. I believe that the major difference between these is that the 1M2 is designed for, you see the USB-C. So USB-C connection here. And the Thunderblade is designed for Thunderbolt. So I think that it does do USB-C as well. I'm only curious as to whether they wanted to make, they otherwise they look pretty much the same. I
did notice that the Thunderblades go up to 32 terabytes.
Yeah, they may have more
capacity,
scale,
so
and
they
also
have a bigger top.
They also seem more expensive. So they may be a rated solution. Let's see, 30. Yeah, Francis has got a really good, and it has Thunderbolt too. That's a really good question. Now that I go back and forth, I'm now having trouble figuring out. They don't. I do think that this one doesn't. It's not talking about the scale, so I think it's. Let's see if they. It's a really good question here. Hold on, I'm just trying to.
The Thunderblade holds more NVMe drives than the other one, and the
it's
other
got
one
a through as well. So the Thunderbolt also has Thunderbolt through. Yeah. So you can put it in the middle of a chain. So it's got a little bit more, and it's rating these. So you can have it be, it's doing a rate of, I think it's got two or
RAID
more.
Controller in there. Yeah,
it's got a RAID controller built into it. So, it does look like the Thunderbolt, it's more expensive, and it also is got more capability, more scalability, more capability is passing through. So this is just what they did is they built you an easier, light
DIY version of
well,
without the RAID controller.
I would say DIY, but I guess it is flexible DIY. Your choice of NVMe. Okay, there we go. But I think that it says. Hold on, let's go by.
I don't think it comes populated with boards.
Well, it says 1 terabyte is $249. 2 terabytes. So
I guess you can buy it.
But you can. They let you buy the enclosure by itself too,
right?
That's
$250. Yeah.
Yeah, and so
Mickey pinged me and said he had some more information, but I don't see it on my chats. I don't. Does anybody have eyes on that?
It's right there at the bottom. He's saying that the Thunderblade comes in models with 4 NVMe slots and another with 8 NVMe slots. The Express 1M2 only has 1 NVMe slot. Another difference is the Thunderblade is just Thunderbolt 3, while the Express 1M2 is USB 4/Thunderbolt 4, which means it is backwards compatible with all flavors of USB and Thunderbolt.
There you go. Hopefully that took care of all of your questions, Francis. So, Courtney, did you get in on and answer everything you needed?
Yeah, I just butted in. I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's absolutely okay. We're all trying to get the best answer we could together here. That's our job. So congratulations, everybody. Thank you all for pitching in. And hopefully, Francis, that gives you all the information you need to make a good decision on this. Let's go on to our next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas asks, is tadpole really a new species of webcam for $129? And there's an Opal camera link there.
Jesse, have you looked into this, and do you know?
I would say, sure, it's a new species. Is it a new genus, family, order? No, it's none of those things, but we could call it a new species.
I want a new phylum. Alex, what do you think?
It's a small webcam. It probably works okay. I think that it's I think all the webcams under $200, between $100 and $200 are all kind of in a similar space. Some of them have a slightly better. Opal's doing a pretty good job of color reproduction. I will say that they carefully compared the webcam to a Mac M1 and carefully didn't compare it to the Mac M2 because there was a huge jump in the camera quality between the M1 and the M2. So the difference between the Opal and the M1, I think that if you have bought a Mac, they're showing a Mac in their stuff there. On PC, there's a lot of variants, but if you're buying an Apple product, the camera the cameras, there's no reason to buy unless you need to point it somewhere else. If you're just going to put it on your laptop and point it out like the way that they're showing it in their marketing, if you bought anything in the last 2 years, it's just not worth it. Like it's just it's the camera on the laptops is so good. And it has so much built into it that it's not worth having an external camera unless you're going to go up to something like the Insta360 Link, where you're going to now have a pan tilt zoom and be able to do a bunch of other things. But I just don't think that I don't think that this one, they try to make it like a fashion accessory on this website. And I'm not buying it.
Courtney, do you want to get back in?
I don't really like the design of it, especially the clip, the way they've designed the clip. If you look at it and you're using it with a laptop, it's pretty humongous. And the way the clip is designed, it's going to hang down, especially all those new narrow bezel laptops. It's going to cover up part of your screen, besides covering up your existing camera, if there is one in your bezel. So it's, large. It's about, 1.5 inches square. So if it's going to stick down or clip it on the top of your laptop screen, it's going to cover up the top portion. And if you're running anything that has a, title bar, control bar across the top that you need to grab or look at or see information on, that's going to be problematic.
Well, hopefully that gives you enough information, Paul, to make some decisions. Let's sneak off to the next question.
Next question is from Sam Rhymes in Maidenhead. I've decided to jump into learning Davinci Resolve. What are some good resources, free or paid?
Jesse Kester's going to help you out here. Jesse?
Whenever I have a question about Resolve, I Google it and end up on a Casey Ferris video. I would start there.
Ah, okay. Alex, what do you think?
So I think that the best, if you're willing to pay a little bit of money, the most organized, best way to learn is Ripple training. So Ripple training does some Resolve training that is just, they're just so good at it. They're just really, really good at giving you examples that are going to let you kind of walk through that. So if you're willing to pay a little bit of money, their training is, I think, the best. And I have been trained by those guys they used to do classes. And so I've been in their classes. I've used their products for decades. They did MacBreak video for a long time, or MacBreak Studio. So we've worked with Steve and Mark for a long time, and so I think that they're the best at building those videos. Also, remember, for nothing, you can take the certified classes from Blackmagic. If you go up to training, blackmagic.com or whatever, they do trainings all over, in different languages. Kind of on a constant basis in different time zones. So keep track of those, and those are very systematic. And I've only sat through mostly the Fairlight stuff with Mary Plumer, and it's really good. Like it's a really it's very, again, systematic and organized. And then there's, as Jesse pointed out, there's a lot of resources on YouTube. I think the only thing I would say about the YouTube resources is that it's a little bit less organized. Like if you want someone if you just want to sit down and do a training, and you're going to spend a weekend in that training or a week in that training, and you're going to come out of it and you feel fairly like, I know all the basic things I need to know, then Ripple training is going to be the right thing for you. If you want to really dive into it, you might want to take the training. But then on top of that, once you've gotten over the hump of understanding how Resolve works, exactly what Jesse said is just you search, you find, you watch, and that's how most of us learn almost everything else in Resolve.
Alexander, you want to get back in?
Yeah, so that's all great advice. Another option too. Now, normally LinkedIn is a good resource, but you got to pay for it. So one thing you may want to check with your local library. If you already have a library membership, a lot of them actually have deals with LinkedIn, and you can actually log in with your library card number and use LinkedIn Learning for free. So that may be another option for you.
Oh, good suggestion. Jesse Kester, you want to get back in?
And don't forget to ask questions here if you hit something that you're not quite sure on. We've got a lot of people here who know Resolve pretty well.
Absolutely. All right. Hopefully that took care of you, Sam. Let's go to the next question.
Jesse Kester from Glendale is asking, we head up the media team for networking events and are working on a one-page for all photo videographers who come to the shoot. What would you include on this semi-formal doc? Rules and regulations, standards and practices, image rights, and releases.
Big question. Jeffrey Powers is going to start you off with some suggestions. Jeffrey?
The biggest problem I see with doing anything like that is a lot of people will just go sign, and that's it. They won't read what's involved. So what I would do is I would actually have them stop and do certain initialing of certain areas. And of course, it's also going to probably depend on the event, right? Because one event they'll probably want green M&Ms, and the other event they probably want brown M&Ms.
Jeff Z. Kester.
We are aware of and okay with the fact that they might not read it. We just want to have something to refer back to. If something goes wrong, we can say, but we told you.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the main thing is also where you're going to put. This is a public you have to post the event. If the event's not in a public area, an open public area, you need to post that these pictures might be used in other areas. So by posting that, you theoretically, if they're clear on all entrances, you theoretically have released the crowd that's walked in, that photos could end up being taken somewhere. But you do need to tell the photographers where those areas are. So it's not just that they can walk in. You can't do them right going into the hotel. It's into the specific room. So these are the rooms you can take photos in. And usually, and these are generally one of the things that we see pretty often is no flash photography. So that's for a whole bunch of reasons. But generally, especially now with the cameras, they're fast enough. But we tend to see that in almost every release that we get is no flash photography at all, and people will walk up to you if you have a flash on your camera. They're going to want you to take it off, and so that's and if they see flashes, they'll come over to see it. It's people find that degrades the overall value of the event, and will go after people with flashes. And then you can decide whether they can put sticks down or not. So that's the other thing that we see is no camera support or camera support, whatever, you can decide what you want to do there. Those are the kind of things that I would think about. Now, one of the things that we've been tasked to do in the past is to light the room in a way that makes it shoot well. So those are oftentimes finding stuff we've used air stars, we've used a variety of other things to create these big soft lights throughout the room, and so that everything is kind of pools of light, and it means that all the photographers just look better. Like they look better at what they do because all the lighting is nice and big and soft, and everybody feels like they're having a good time.
Courtney Gooden?
Yeah, and if it's a proprietary information, in other words, it's a closed event or internal event for a corporation, you might want to have an NDA on there. And the Apple NDAs, for example, were 12 pages long of 2-point type. So I think if you want to include a legally enforceable non-disclosure agreement, one page is not going to do it for you.
The only thing I'd say is remember that you're working with visual artists here. I would keep the text to a minimum. Yes, if you want legalese in there, you're going to have to do what you have to do. But most of the time, if I was designing something to be handed to people who work in the visual arts, I would make the pictures big and the text as brief as possible. Hopefully, it's going to be fun, Jesse. Let's go on to the next question.
From the QR code, Paul Kovacs in Elkhart, Indiana asks, using Rode Lavalier Go mics with a wireless system for two cameras, looking to upgrade lavs, suggestions that won't break the bank too much, working on media budget for new fiscal year. Thanks.
And Alexander's going to take off his reader hat and put on his answerer hat. Go for it.
Yeah, so there are a few options out there without knowing the exact budget. So Rode makes the Rode Lavalier 2. This is a newer one that they price a little bit more than some of the other ones that they have there. This is their higher end option, although I would just skip this personally and go straight to you're gonna have to spend a couple $100 more. And I don't know if this is within your budget, but since you're in the US, this is $389. This is the Senken COS 11D, which is an omnidirectional, fairly discreet lav. And this is going to be significantly better quality than anything that Rode makes or any sub, $150 lav. So that's just one option. Obviously, there's other options from companies like DPA and stuff like that. And you may end up paying around $400 or maybe a little bit more. So it just depends on what exactly your budget is. There's not a ton of options that I've found that are less than $250 that are really, really good. So I would probably look at this price point for a lav.
Courtney Gooden?
I kind of like for the stuff in that price range, which is 2.4 gigahertz. Wireless type systems. The DJI wireless Mic 2. It's similar to the Rode Go's, but it does still have on microphone transmitter recording, so you can have a backup recording on each of the transmitters. And I would pair this $250 set of 2 transmitters and 1 receiver with some good lavaliers. Go for a COS 11 or something, which will cost you as much as this whole system, but to plug a good lavalier in there and get it made up with a connector that will fit, the 3.5 millimeter connector that's wired correctly to fit into the DJIs. A COS 11 or even an MK2 Sennheiser with a good little lav that you can separately plug into the transmitter, so you don't have to have that little bulky pack sitting in front of you. Also, I've heard a few good things about the Lark from Holy Land, which is a much smaller little round thing that you can conceal a little better, that has a built-in microphone into it. I don't think it has onboard recording, though, not in the United States.
Alex?
Yeah, I'll second that. If you're looking for another transmitter as opposed to another lav, I have the DJI Mic 2s and really happy with them. So for what they are, I'm actually using them for something tomorrow. they, something that's a little bit more casual. Obviously, something like Electrosonic is going to give you a lot more quality, distance, all kinds of other things. For something that you can just turn on and clip to people and not have it be complicated, it's pretty useful piece of gear.
Yeah, I wish Mickey was around today because he has a lot of experience with these kind of systems. I will say that I used to use lavs a ton when I was an active video shooter out there. And for me, I always listen for low-end reach. Almost all the lavs are really good in the speech ranges. I mean, that's what they're designed for, is to put it close to somebody and listen to them talking. But boy, I remember the first time I really upgraded. I remember hearing differences when we moved to trams that had a slightly larger diaphragm. I also remember the first time I was around a Countryman and somebody EQ'd it really well, and I was shocked at how much low end I got from that particular system. So each one is going to have a slightly different profile. They're all good at speech. You'll get clear, clean, articulate speech with most of these. But if you want a fuller sound, that's when I think the investment in a higher level tends to give you some results. Alex, your thoughts?
I didn't finish with lavs. Also, if you're adding a lav, you might want to look at, I think you can use the Sennheiser ME22 as a lav for these mics, as well as the Sony ECM CS3. So those are other ones to kind of think about as well.
Yeah, actually, Mickey had a series of suggestions. COS 11 certainly offer the best bang for the buck because of how long they last compared to the others. So that's something if you're looking for a long-term. Countryman B3s are cheap and sound good, but not as durable as COS 11s. And he says the Sennheiser MKE2 also sounds great, but again, not as durable as the COS 11. So there's some suggestions from somebody who does sound for a living. Let's dive into our next question.
Andy Kokendorfer from Vieira, Florida asks, Twitch announced enhanced broadcasting as open beta, soon to support 4K/60, HEVC, AV1. Twitch is transitioning to fragmented MP4. Thoughts?
Alex Lindsay, do you have some expertise in this area?
Yeah, they're doing what YouTube did 5 years ago. so it's great, and they're making you do the encoding. I don't think I think Twitch their enhanced broadcasting, I think, is they will have you do the 4K encoding, for them or whatever, or if you need to do any, because remember I think they're setting this whole thing up where they're kind of pushing all the costs off to the users. I guess it's fine. I mean, it gives you some control or something. I don't know. Look, if you have an audience in Twitch, then it's great to have better quality video that goes out to make that actually happen. If you don't have an audience in Twitch, it's almost impossible to build an audience in Twitch. So if you if you're gonna do this, I mean, you're not getting any more quality out of Twitch than you're going to get out of YouTube. So if you're already on YouTube or you're thinking about starting, I think your chances of building an audience is much higher on YouTube than it is in Twitch, unless you're gaming. Twitch has been doing a lot of work on trying to do something other than gaming, and they have not been successful. So it's a gaming platform, and if you're doing a bunch of gaming platform, it's the place for you to be. But YouTube's becoming more and more of a gaming platform as well, and it has a much better back-end infrastructure than Twitch. It's not close. Like the level of if you look at YouTube TV, that's driving the back end that does affect its back end is driving the quality of the back end of all of YouTube Live as well. Those things are informing each other. It's just not like it's not close between the two. And Twitch has always been a little quirky, and this is just going to be more larger quirky. But it's a great platform if you're a gamer, and the average view time on Twitch is very high. But it's got its own culture, and I think it's pretty hard to crack. And I haven't seen anybody successful other than gamers on Twitch.
I want to know can I say quirk quotient? What is its quirk quotient?
It's got a high quirk
It's very difficult. Anyway, let's go on to the next question.
Next question is from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. Jef Keithly has a podcast called What Makes It Tick? What is this about, and where is Jef going with this? Great show, by the way.
Who could answer this question? Let me think. Jef Keithly is on the panel today. Jef, take it.
Glad you're enjoying it, Paul. I started this, I guess it's back November, December last year, and it's a weekly show that we're doing mostly out of my Discord. It's a lot of guys in my same area, same expertise. I would say they're professionals that are doing what we do. And so we just started comparing notes and going, it's like, maybe it'd be better just to start archiving some of these discussions we were having. And so that's where the show kind of came from. And then every week we just kind of pick things that are a little bit more production oriented, and we can get a deeper dive into it. We've got some really big hitters in there, and it's not a daily thing, but we try to do it every week, and we've had a lot of fun with it. We've done everything from power to on time rundowns to just recently we had Llama Audio on, and we had them actually as guests. We've had Joe with Central Control on as a guest, and I'm just kind of using my contacts in the business to bring different people on. But sometimes it's a discussion around friends of what works and what doesn't work. We heard from Greg Ballot, who actually ran U.S. Open, PGA U.S. Open event a couple of weeks ago, and he told us about a power issue that happened in their truck compound, and it's sort of things you don't necessarily hear about on the public side of things, but between friends, and well, then YouTube, it's published. But it was nice to kind of compare notes sometimes, and whenever we have a specific project to work on together, we did a lot of tests with say NDI Bridge, for instance, that were just everybody was spinning up, and we were all comparing notes through the show just to kind of see what's the best workflows and things like that. So we're having a good time with it. Anybody's welcome to join in. Just hit me up on the Discord, and I'll send you a link, and come on in and have fun with us.
Perfect. Looking forward to it. And it's on YouTube, and it's What Makes It Tick Live. Is that correct? That's how you find it.
Yep,
okay, great. Let's move on to the next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, would you trust TRENDnet switches for cost-effective 2.5/10 gigabit Ethernet in production?
Courtney Gooden's going to start us off here. Courtney?
I've been using them in production somewhat, but not a lot of heavy-duty production. I've been using TRENDnet switches for many years just at home. Not necessarily in production, but in production just for my own private network on set, etc., but not for broadcast. This one is kind of nice because it's 10 gigabit and 1 gigabit and 2.5 gigabit interchangeable, and it rack mounts, so it looks pretty handy. And they've been pretty cheaply priced. This one, I think, is a managed switch. They make them unmanaged versions as well, so it depends on how much management you want to use. And QoS, if you're using QoS to get your throughput up, maybe that might be a great choice for you. But I can't speak as to the viability of this particular switch because I haven't used it.
Jef Keithly.
I do have an opinion every once in a while about networking. Depends more so. Yeah, it just every once in a while. It depends more so of what you say as production. If you're just running a few channels of Dante or even 64, whatever, if you've got a few devices on your network and you're just running Dante on just that network, that's one thing. But when you start combining things together and you need to go deeper into VLANs and you don't want to monkey around with all the different settings and stuff to make it work, there's a lot better choices out there, and just a little bit more money will save you from pulling out your hair. As you notice, I don't have any anymore. It's because I used lower cost switches before. And so, I mean, this is the result. This is where you're going to end up if you don't buy a Netgear AV4250. It's just, I'm just letting it go.
I know enough not to touch that. I'm just going to go on and say next question.
Next one's from Gordon Laking, Los Angeles, California. How much bandwidth does Zoom Tiles use?
Alex.
It depends. So
Our favorite answer.
Yeah, exactly. So Zoom Tiles, it doesn't take very much to upload because it's not uploading. I mean, it's uploading one image, which is you, right? So it's still the 1080p. It could be up to 6 megs a second. On the way down, it depends on, so in Zoom Tiles, you have the ability to set the resolution. So you can turn that resolution for every tile up or down. So you can make it all 1080p, but if you're going to have 12 people or 8 or 18 people on there, it doesn't make sense to pull 1080p for all of those. And you will run into your bandwidth limits. So you have most accounts are limited to 30 megs a second from Zoom. The high bandwidth accounts are limited to 100 megs a second. So it can only pull that up to that much. So you want to be thinking, but if you have that many people, you should be turning that resolution down. So if you've got a bunch of, but you can set that in the Zoom Tiles interface of what resolution is every tile. The Zoom team, or Andy and Jonathan, are going to be here on Tuesday. So they're going to be here to answer your questions about Zoom Tiles. We're super excited to have them, and you're going to be able to ask all these questions. It is an incredible application. And I think they're just getting started on it. I have to say, as a Mac user, it just feels like the most Mac app I've ever, in video, I've ever opened. It just has all the feel of everything, just kind of works, and it moves quickly, and it's very responsive. So I would highly recommend playing with it because it's really good, and you'll be able to ask all your questions. Try to take a look at it. We've talked about it a little bit in the past, but download it, take a look at it. And come with your questions on Tuesday, because you have the two world experts in tiles that'll be on our show second hour of Tuesday, this coming Tuesday.
Not sure this could happen anywhere else on the web, but right here at Office Hours. So Tuesday it is. Let's go to the next question.
Guy Cochran in Seattle is asking, money no object, what would be the best way to get a glitch-free wireless video signal across all of Central Hall for NAB 2025?
I don't know if you noticed me leaning forward on this, but this would be great. We would love to have wall-to-wall coverage. Alex, what's your thought?
I do think that Vislink is either the best or very close to the best as far as wireless transmission, and that's what we had there. The disadvantage that we had was we were behind a bunch of concrete, a bunch of rebar. So we had a ton of rebar that was in our way. We weren't allowed to move our antenna as high as we'd like it to be. So there was a bunch of disadvantages, and we were off to one side at the Central Hall. Now, one thing is, we know where the best place in Central Hall would be, and it's not available. And the reason is they're not going to use Central Hall next year. So there's no Central Hall next year. It's all in the North Hall. As they do the retrofit that we saw at North Hall is coming to Central Hall. So they're going to be rebuilding. They're going to be rebuilding Central Hall. I think they've already started to tear it apart. So it'll be in pieces when we get there. So North Hall will be where we go. The main thing that we need to do is get the antennas. I don't think it's the antenna system. Again, I think that Vislink is about as good as it gets. The main thing is we need to move the Vislink system to the center. Now, our current booth that we have laid out with NAB is kind of still off to one side. Much better than the last show because I think we proved ourselves. So it's a much better setup than the last show, but it's still off to one side. And so it's at that disadvantage. Now, either we get an antenna very high there, or what we're looking at is the ability to install those antennas, 2 or 3 of those antennas in the North Hall, and then have them fibered back to us. So we're not actually trying to have one receiver in one place, but we'll spread out that transmission. I feel very confident that if we are able to pull that off, and we're already in the discussions to make that happen, that we will absolutely have clean or almost very close to pristine wireless throughout the entire North Hall.
Did you say North Hall or is it West? West is the big new one. And
No, it's me. There's North and West. West, otherwise known as Siberia. So like it's so
paradise.
far away. It's just so far away, and it's less painful because they have the little Tesla thing, that goes back and forth, the little Tesla cars. So it's not as painful, but it's still a royal pain in the neck to go over to West Hall. So even from the North Hall, which is theoretically right next to it, it just feels like you're walking to Siberia. So and the reality is that most of the stuff over in the West Hall is not very photogenic. So the stuff that's over there is big. It's a lot of big companies with big deals doing. And it's much quieter, and it's all it's a different thing. But very little of it is the kind of stuff we like to shoot. And the kind of stuff we like to talk about. It's not that we don't talk about it. It's just that there's not a lot to do with the camera. So
are they going to be in North and South? That'll be a long stretch if they're taking Central out of it.
I think that the South Hall will still have, the same stuff as the South Hall, or they might be filling out the North Hall and filling out the West Hall completely. They may not be using the South Hall at all. The South Hall was only, and I don't know that for sure. I just can't remember. I think that I think that they may still be using the South Hall for at least the lower part. The upper part was very empty. It was a lot of big stages. The downstairs of the South Hall was still pretty busy, although we have to remember that the downstairs of the South Hall, and I think it's because they're working on it though, was only half full. I got super confused because there was an escalator that's always in the middle of the South Hall. Right. And it took me a second to re-gear and realize that the escalator was at the end of the hall. So the South Hall was only half full. I would say the South Hall was probably 1/4 full of what it can hold. Between the up and down. And so I don't know if they need it, to be honest, to do that. And again, we have to remember that it's not only that things have gotten a little smaller, but that the West Hall is a big hall. So it can absorb a lot of people. So
it's huge.
So I think that it's not that it's necessarily a lot less real estate. It's just that they moved a lot of those things that were in those things into the West Hall. So it's a very pretty hall, by the way. The West Hall is gorgeous. It's just really far away.
Jason and I went out and shot a lot, so I actually have a lot of footage of West. And North was pretty much cut off from us because of the construction this year. Then we were in Central most of the time. We also covered South Hall. So, it'd be interesting to see how they reconfigure. There's a lot of construction that's going to be happening. Courtney, you had thoughts about the question.
Well, he did say money is no object in the question. So I would say, and this is the one convention where you can probably do this, is the FCC frequently will grant temporary licenses to broadcast ATSC3 on ATSC3 Next Gen TV Automotive for doing field tests. And they make a deal with the local television station in Las Vegas to set up a transmitter and broadcast all over Las Vegas in these new formats. ATSC3 is a subdivision, automotive is a subdivision to allow for mobile receivers in cars and things. So it has a lot of good coverage and it has multiple transmitter points that you can set up. So something like that, make a deal with the local television station and the FCC, and you can have your own broadcast and not only cover the central hall, cover all the halls and have it be stable as you move around because it eliminates multipath issues.
Cool. Alex?
And I forgot to mention that as a service, if we wanted to bring a partner in, the standard for this is a company called 3G. This is 3gmedia.tv. I know the guys over there because we've used it they do NASCAR, in the Indy. We built a mesh network over the Sonoma Raceway that was able to pick up the cars at 200 miles an hour going, roaming around, completely seamless, to make that actually happen. And so that we could have a two-way, it wasn't just seamless like a video from the car. It was a real-time conversation with a person in the second seater of Mario Andretti's two-seater that he uses. And so we had a press person in there, and then we had some of the IndyCar racers that were standing there talking to them while they were going through it. Now, we thought that, by the way, the video was perfect, and I got to drive my car on the raceway.
I want to do NAB from the sidecar of a motorcycle. Come on, we can do this.
Yeah, exactly. But we did it. We did that, and we thought it would be great, except for what a press person who's never been in an IndyCar sounds like. Like the conversation is mostly just a lot of swear words.
G-force.
The conversation wasn't nearly as good. So, I mean, if we want, we can talk to 3G as well. But again, like they could wire, if with the right budget, they could wire up the whole of the South Hall, West Hall. We could have wireless in the hallways in between. I mean, that's what they do. And we've worked with them on a variety of just bat crazy, events. And so they do a really good job.
3 last words: custom golf carts.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be great. We can put a jib on one. It'd be fabulous.
Exactly.
Let's go on to the next question.
Next question is from Robert Sababadi in Poland. Working on hybrid workshop with interpretation. The 50 participants on site are seated at 8 round tables, each with conference microphones. How should I set up cameras with operators to capture individual participants at all tables?
Jesse Kester, start us off.
If I had to do this, I would start with PTZs at the center of each table. It's hard for me to imagine an efficient solution that doesn't begin at the center of the 8 tables, or anything that would require fewer than 8 operators to capture all these different points in the room. What I'd be more concerned about, and I don't know how much control you have, is kind of like intellectual data flow. And what I mean by that is you've got 8 round tables of people chattering. Even if you have control over which mic is live and which isn't, the information going out to this stream is going to change it from a hybrid to really a local event with a lot of people with their sound turned off.
Interesting. Alex, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Jesse. You're probably, from an efficiency perspective, you're probably looking at a PTZ in the center, or maybe 2 PTZs in the center, because you may want to have, if you think about the table, you may not want to try to cover, it may be a little bit of a whiplash if you are, so if you think about the table here, you may want to have one camera that covers this side and another camera that covers this side. And what that means is that the camera in the center doesn't have to swing all the way around. People, if someone's talking back and forth and that's swinging around back and forth to show them, could be hard. And if they're talking back and forth, you can have it looking at this one, looking at this person, and another one looking at over here. So you have 2 different cameras that are going back and forth. So I think that might be a better solution there. It is logistically, when you have a round table, and round tables are great, the way that we like to do them when we do the round tables, we like to try to get an odd number in the table. So you have people here, and you have it like this. And then what we do is we put the cameras pretty far out, and we put a camera for every person, PTZ for every person, like this, and we shoot all these gaps. And when we shoot all those gaps, we can sit there and they can all talk to each other, and it works really well. Like, it looks really good. If you can see some of our unfunded tests, which don't look as good as the funded tests, on the Final Cut virtual user group on the Pixel Core site, you'll see some of us testing that and working with it. So that can work really well. One thing you want to research is the Zoom room. If you're putting these into a hybrid and you might be using Zoom, look at the Zoom rooms and their AI solutions. So they have a bunch of stuff that lets you control cameras, that it's making decisions based on who's talking, like where those cameras go and how they go and everything else. And so you may want to, especially if it's further out, that's a pretty interesting thing to think about.
Jeffrey Powers.
I'm more interested in how you're going to be doing the microphones on that. If you put a camera on the center of the table and that table bounces around, the camera is going to bounce around. You want to bring it as eye level as possible. Otherwise, people are looking at people's noses, and that's not a good thing. So get it up. Try and do some sort of matte, neoprene type matte, maybe even the new bounce control options, the vibration control options that you can get for a PTZ camera. Cable management's going to be a real pain, so you're going to have a lot of gaff tape to make sure that those cables aren't going to be kicked and pulled apart. And then, of course, what you're doing for the microphone, is it going to be on the table? Is each person going to be mic'd up? That's going to bring a whole new amount of gaff tape that comes through that whole thing. So, and then 8 tables, that's going to be a big ask. If you only have a limited amount of cameras, then maybe you should put them on the ends of the room, see how far the PTZs go, and then you can have them go to where they need to go, and you'll have little bits of adjustments. But you can also set those up and have like a Stream Deck or something like that. Create it.
Some notes for the coming week. Tomorrow, Friday, our topic is networking, layering, and hierarchy, with a discussion of Layer 2 versus Layer 3 switches and why you might or might not need one of those. That is what we're talking about tomorrow. And, of course, on the weekends, as you know, starting on Saturday, we have kind of a general discussion. It's more a let's talk through things that we have generically does. It's all your question and answer. And on Sunday, we kind of get more philosophical. We talk about bigger things. Sunday's show is not broadcast on YouTube, so it gives us a little more freedom to just talk through things. At the top of the hour here, we will come back and we're going to talk about our second hour topic. We'll be right back.